Hello everybody and welcome to this edition of Inside Insurance. Today we're going to have a special focus on captives. My name is Jean Ray. I'm a consulting partner here at KPMG and I'm delighted to be your host for this series. Today I'm delighted to be joined by Brian Quinn. Brian is founding director and owner of Granite Management Limited. Granite is a Bermuda-based captive management and consulting company which focuses on international employee benefits and other specialist risks. Brian and Granite are world leaders in the reinsurance and financing of employee benefit programs. The programs are designed to reduce the cost of the programs for client companies without changing the terms and conditions and indeed the benefits. Brian provides services to a large number of Fortune 100 companies. This enables the leaders of those companies to implement their global programs efficiently while at the same time realising significant and tangible benefits. So thanks a million, Brian, for joining me today.
Thanks a lot. Great to see you and meet you, Jean.
Yeah, and for coming to us in Dublin.
Yeah.
I suppose we might
the
start...
The accent's deceiving. I'm not based here.
It is. I suppose as founding, I suppose, director of Granite, might be useful just to start by giving a little bit of context to Granite, the kind of work you do, the services you provide, and so on.
So yeah, as my years you can see, I've been working in insurance for a long time. Started working in Dublin here and moved on. But I ended up working in a corporate risk management function within a large multinational. And at the time, back about 20 odd years ago, we looked to bring employee benefits in. And at that time, it was a large American multinational, and I helped them to bring in employee benefits into their captive. We were the first US company to bring employee benefits into the captive. So I was at the forefront of developing that whole employee benefit and captive sphere. And we were actually only the fifth company globally who'd done it at the time. And it's now grown from like a small starting back there 20 odd years ago to where it is today as a very key part of employee benefit captives globally, and very proud that Granite has become that. But I formed Granite 15 years ago to actually specialise. We are a captive manager in Bermuda, but we're also this consulting, and the largest part of our business is actually helping clients to bring employee benefits into their captives, to manage them, to get the benefits that you talked about. I think we'll talk a little bit more about later on in this segment. And over the last 15 years or so since we founded Granite, we have expanded that to, we are now the largest provider of employee benefit financing solutions in the world. And something we're very proud of, and we are the world leader in that sphere.
And given you're the world leader in that sphere, I suppose maybe just a bit more context in terms of when companies think of employee benefits, what are they thinking of? What are the options, and where does the captive fit in?
So it has evolved, like everything, it evolves over time. So when I did this 20 years ago with my previous employer, we were looking at one thing, was cost. We were cost, and employee benefits was a significant cost that wasn't being managed. The budget was under HR, and they didn't really focus on cost. And of course, the time, as we all know, has changed. HR teams have become much more cost conscious today than they were back 20 years ago, and they're looking at that, and the cost is still there. It's still an issue, but over that period now, cost is not so much an issue now. And companies are using their captives to actually enforce their DE&E, their diversity, equity, inclusion promises on a global basis. So they want to have not just say that they're doing stuff, but actually show that they're doing it on a consistent and global basis. So, an example of that would be same-sex partner recognition. And a lot of most of my clients are US-based companies or large European multinationals. And in their home country, that's a given that they would have same-sex partner recognition, that is included. That is not the case around the world with your benefit programs that you're buying on a local basis. So you use the captive to command and control that benefit and making sure that everyone's on a consistent basis. And that's a very easy one. There's lots of other things when you get into fertility, transgender issues, you get into other like STDs and all these other areas, and trying to do that on a global basis. That's a big area that we concentrate on at Granite, is sort of helping the clients to bring those in, but also in a cost-effective manner, so that they're looking at it and they know what the cost is going to be. So we're giving them the ability to deliver their promise, but at a cost that's affordable.
Which sounds very attractive, given the growing importance of DE&I in particular. I suppose if somebody listening was liking the sound of this, I suppose apart from calling you, I suppose what first steps would they go to in terms of trying to?
Yeah, like the first thing you have to do in any multinational company is you need to get HR and Treasury and accounting together. They need to. The HR and the Treasury are really the key functions. Legal and procurement and all these other they're secondary, but it's actually Treasury bringing their financial acumen and risk management philosophy to the HR, and the HR, because a captive will always be owned by the Treasury. So you need Treasury involved in there. But that is the first key step. And then it's looking at what are we doing and what are we spending on a global basis. And companies are very similar in this whenever they start this road, because they get there, they don't know what they have. And that's the first reason I always tell people you need a captive is you want that transparency, the knowledge, and the ability to actually command and control what you're doing. Not control it on the basis of telling people in Italy or in Hong Kong what benefits they should provide. That's a local HR decision. But controlling it in terms of that we know what's there centrally, we know what the costs are going to be. And that's very critical from a Treasury point of view, so they know. A good example would be Brazil, where they brought in new legislation in terms of retiree medical. You had to provide retiree medical. And this became the companies weren't aware of it because it didn't get socialized up the chain, except those people who had captives. It came back up through there. But when this was a huge cost, because you were obligated in Brazil to provide this healthcare benefit to your employees until they died. And that was a massive, and the captive gives you that transparency, but also that ability to command and control.
Yeah. I suppose, thinking of the market here, we have a lot of captives here, but they're probably a little bit more in the P&C space, so property, general liability, deductible infill type of covers. I suppose, how does what you're doing compare, and what might be the differences and complexities between them?
Yeah, well, this will start off like globally there's about 5,000 captives. Rough number, don't quote me on that one, although I just quoted myself. The 5,000 captives, of that there are only, and it's a very hard number to, even though we're the global leader in this, we don't know exactly how many because there's a lot of not actively managed, but there's probably somewhere about 200 to 250 employee benefit captives. Because it isn't for everyone, you have to be a global, you do have to have a bit of a reach. But a lot of smaller companies are actually coming to us now to do that, and we've done one recently which is very small, and it's actually very viable. So it is changing. But in the P&C world, P&C is very easy in some senses. From an actuarial point of view, Gene, it's a lot more difficult because you got longer tails, especially in your casualty and your workers' comp, employers' liability lines, and you have a lot of developments. EB does not have that because EB is pretty much a straight line. It's 1 year. You got medical trend. Medical is probably the easiest cover to put in. Like we all know, medical is going to go up by between 8 to 15% per annum. Life insurance is simple. They either die or they don't die within a period. Disability, it can get tricky depending on the country. Where we are now is one of those countries. Ireland has it's a rocky road in disability, but it's very manageable. Whereas in P&C, you've got a lot more of that trend. But in P&C, you have the ability, you can actually write one policy form for the world. You can issue a policy from Dublin here, where we are today, that will cover all the countries in Europe, within that in your freedom of services, and it's one policy for everywhere. Employee benefits, you can't do that. Even though you have freedom of services here, you have to have a medical policy in France that is tied up to the network of medical doctors, hospitals, and also the social security systems. Yeah. And that's where employee benefits becomes a lot more complex, and where you need both, a consultant like ourselves, and there's others in the market, but we're the best. But the consultant like ourselves in the market to help you manage that side of it. But you also need a global local broker. They need to be managed to go in there and work in tandem with the captive. And that's an important part, because one thing that does go away when you go into an employee benefit captive is the need to remarket the programs every year, which is the same as P&C. The captive is taking the risk. It's not looking to make a profit, it's really looking for a buffer rather than a profit. And it is maintaining a cost-effective solution over time, and then that manages it a lot better. So it's very similar, but I always like to say what EB captives are doing is bringing Treasury risk management philosophy to human resources without changing the benefits, without changing what they're doing or managing the promise. Because another key thing we do in our role with our clients is educating Treasury on the need to have benefits that are going to attract and retain the best employees, because that's the only reason. You don't provide employee benefits just to be nice. You employ them, you want to get the best people and to attract them going forward.
Yeah. I suppose you've touched on a lot of developments around retention, DE&I and that. I suppose, in your opinion, what are some of the biggest developments in the most recent, past, but also looking out into the future as well?
Well, the big thing has been actually this terms and conditions, is reviewing terms and conditions on a global basis. And I do have to boast, Granite invented that back a few years ago, and now all our peers are doing the same thing. And it is doing an inventory on what the policies are covering, and the captive gives you the ability to do that. And it's looking at those terms and conditions in detail. So one of the key one that we did back in 2014, we were looking at passive war exclusions, which were on policies globally, and we started removing the passive war exclusions, not war, but passive war. And the reason why we started looking at that was because Russia had at that point annexed Crimea, and we could see there was an issue, and there was the eastern side. So all of our clients at that point, we had passive war included within their policies via the captives. That's what the clients wanted to do. As we all know today, we're in a very different era, and there's now an active war. And those clients are very happy now. Those passive war exclusions are gone. Their employees that are still in those countries, and Ukraine would be the main one at the moment, are covered under the policies, and there's no exclusions. A lot of companies are now looking at that and amending it as well, because some of those are not really relevant. So those are some examples of what we were doing. There's other things I talked about, the transgender, but we're also working on what I call the Granite umbrella product, which sits above everything, which is providing additional benefits and additional sort of DE&I objectives on a global basis, and that's a sort of next level. But I think the start off, if anyone's looking to start, is you want to get that inventory of what you have today, work at what are the financial impact or savings that you could get, but then also how can we manage those programs better.
I suppose we've touched on a lot of topics. I suppose if there was one key thing you'd like the audience to take from today, what would that be?
If you're considering bringing employee benefits into the captive, don't start. It is a great benefit. It is, and not necessarily Granite. I'd love you to work with Granite, but there's lots of other great consultants out there in the world. But it is of great benefit, not just to you as a company, but to your employees, and to help you to attract and retain people. A lot of the work that we're doing in the DE&I space at the moment, I think, is really evolving the world. Another great example of something we did was when COVID came out. There was actually, mostly in Asia, there was pandemic exclusions in medical policies, and we got that not removed. We just said no. The pandemic exclusion was amended so that if the local health care services or the WHO failed to respond, then the pandemic exclusion would be waived, and that they would provide cover for those. And that at first that didn't make any difference because there was no real issues, because the WHO and the local governments were providing all that. But we actually had, India was, we all know, was a very severe issues at COVID, and again that's where we had that removed, so it didn't impact the employees of our clients in India at the time, which was a substantial number of employees. So, yeah, it's don't wait. It's go forward, and there's lots of opportunity out there to bring employee benefits into your captive.
Yeah, thanks a million for joining us and taking time out of your schedule while you're here. And for those at home, thanks for joining. I suppose if any of the areas discussed today resonated with you in particular, feel free to reach out to myself or your usual KPMG contact. Thanks for joining, and see you soon.